Is that okay? Okay. Who also sits on Bhutan's National Commission for UNESCO and is one of this year's laureates for the Guzi Peace Prize. So now, in order to present our guest of honor to you, I give you Ashok Sam, the Associate Dean of the Global MBA Program.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm very happy that Dr. Powdyel is here with us. Okay, it's a small one. It's good. Yeah. So I met Dr. Powdyel in Bhutan this summer, and I was looking for happiness in a country where after 1 year of intense work to launch your program, the Global MBA program, I was trying to find some peace of mind. And I called up Mr. Powdyel because I met the Prime Minister of Bhutan in one of the conferences, and he had invited me to Bhutan. So though I didn't go back to him, but then I thought that why not take this opportunity to see what is happening. And in this country, it's a small country, and it's a beautiful country, and it is going through a liberalization phase where plenty of new things are happening. And then I called him, and then I was staying in a hotel which has some alumni from our hospitality industry, and they told me that it's okay to call. And then Mr. Powdyel was very open and told me, you can come and meet me. So I went there just like that. And then we had a 1 hour, I think 1.5 hour discussion. And then we said that if you are in Paris, we would be very happy to hear you, and also for our students to hear what you think. And then here we are in end of October, where Mr. Powdyel from Bhutan is in Sergi, for example, and he is going to speak on gross national happiness and green education. Mr. Powdyel.
Professor, is this light already on? It's warm. Sorry, yes. Do I use this?
No, you have your...
Sorry, yes. I know, Kadichi, yes. Good evening, Professor Som, Professor Ray, Professor Garrett.
Professor Gibilek.
All right. And Professor Dominic, other members of the faculty, and...
Professor Lawrence, we have another...
yes, sir. Yes, and scholars of the India Research Center, University of Sergi, right? I'm very grateful to Professor Som for this very kind invitation to visit this university. Whenever I think of a university, it lifts my mind, expands my heart, because the university, as I know, is a place where great ideas that move our world are fashioned. And certainly I'm told that this university is the 8th amongst many business schools in the world. And I'm so glad to be here this afternoon. I see that there's a little poster all over the place, and that already unnerved me and disarmed me. But I'll share with you this afternoon whatever little time might permit about a very big dream that my country, Bhutan, has had over the past 3.5 decades. I wasn't very sure as to how any talk on gross national happiness might be received in a business school, because most business schools, by the nature of their orientation, have a slightly different inclination from the one that gross national happiness concerns itself with. But in the little interaction that I had with the Vice President and Professor Som and Professor Gerard, I got to understand that the founding principles of this university are very much alike the founding principles of gross national happiness. I felt a little better, and I thought that I might share a few thoughts about gross national happiness. Of course, this faculty here and the scholars who come to the India Research Center, this university from all over the world, would have examined different systems around the world, different philosophical traditions, different notions about human development. But a young king in Bhutan, the youngest when he took over in 1972, decided that the way societies in the world were advancing, the way progress was measured, had its limitations. He saw that the conventional way of measuring success through the yardstick called gross domestic product or gross national product was not comprehensive enough. So he thought that the best way to measure or to assess the development of a society or a country was by looking at the welfare, the well-being of the people of that country. And these notions about development are based on certain beliefs. And these beliefs are something that His Majesty the Fourth King of Bhutan, Gyalpo Jigme Singye Wangchuk, had when somebody asked him, what is the gross domestic product of Bhutan or the per capita income of Bhutan? He said, we are not so keen about gross domestic product. At best, we are interested in gross national happiness. And from then on, this idea actually caught on. In between, not many people thought that this is going to be something that the world would need. But over the past 3.5 decades, the world has become a little more chastened. The world has seen limits to development, limits to progress. And today, many people around the world, many countries around the world, are a little more kindly disposed towards this idea of gross national happiness. Because with all the developments that we have seen around the world, whether it is in terms of service delivery systems, building of a smart, state-of-the-art tools and technology, whether it is founding ways, establishing institutions, founding facilities that would promote the welfare of people, whatever it is that human genius has put in place, all these are actually showing their own limitations, including the financial systems, the economic systems. And with all the progress that human beings have made, with all the progress that the world has made, it seems that there's a lot more that needs to be done, and there's a lot that human beings do not seem to be satisfied with. And there's a particular quote from Albert Schweitzer when he was receiving his Nobel Prize in 1952. Even at that time, he had something like this to say: man has become a superman, but the superman with the superhuman power has not risen to the level of superhuman reason. The degree to which his power grows, he becomes more and more a poor man. It must shake up our conscience that we become all the more inhuman the more we grow into Superman. This is not too much of a flattering comment on the human condition. We do not know where the rains started beating us. We have all these discoveries and inventions. We have this expanding knowledge and accumulated wisdom. But our lot with all these doesn't seem to be as good as it could have been. We often wonder How did our world get the way it has? What happened to the Shakespearean vision of man? He had a wonderful vision of human beings. He saw that human beings were noble in reason, in form, in moving. He found them admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. This was the vision of human beings. But today, we seem to have what we call this Faustian knowledge. We have Faustian science, we have Faustian technology, but somewhere along the line, we seem to have lost that Faustian music. We seem to feel that things fall apart and the center does not seem to hold. Einstein had said long ago something to this effect: sharpening of tools and confusion of aims is characteristic of our age. Do we have an alternative? Can our having mode also include a being mode? People seem to see at least two modes of living, the having mode and the being mode. Our contemporary life seems to be characterized more and more by the having mode and not the being mode. Voltaire had said long ago, life is thickly sown with thorns. I know, and I know. Let me read it again. Life is thickly sown with thorns. I know no other remedy than to pass quickly through them. The longer we dwell on our misfortunes, the greater is their power to harm us. Maybe when I have all of you young men and women from different countries whose world is simply expanding, whose universe is growing, perhaps these thoughts are rather heavy. However, this is a part of the saga of our world. The longer we dwell on our misfortunes, the greater is the power to harm us. And for a world that is long used to measuring progress by the linear, unidimensional economic yardstick of GDP, any suggestion to the contrary might smack of the pious and the philosophical, too idealistic for a time, largely defined by Dickens's character called Fagin. Fagin was a very interesting character. He had a wonderful philosophy about life. He felt something like this: in this world, nothing counts, but in the bank, large amounts. This was the Fagin philosophy, and a large part of the world seems to be defined by this philosophy of Fagin. In this world, nothing counts, but in the bank, large amounts. His Majesty the Fourth King of Bhutan, King Jigme Singye Wangchuk, saw life and saw it fall. The youngest monarch in the world then articulated a fundamental fact about us humans when he declared that gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. I feel that having gone through a catharsis of some sorts, a more chastened world seems to be listening. Bhutan's proposal to include the pursuit of happiness as a goal for the UN family of nations, having been endorsed by the General Assembly, the human race might find itself engaged in a more sublime preoccupation. As the members of my audience would know, last year Bhutan has proposed to the UN General Assembly inclusion of pursuit of happiness as one of the goals. And this year, on the 19th of July 2011, the UN General Assembly has endorsed this proposal, and now the 193 members of the UN family of nations might include in their planning pursuit of happiness as a very important goal to be pursued by different nations. Where does the pursuit of happiness or gross national happiness situates itself. The ideal of gross national happiness is rooted in the belief that the ultimate desire of all human beings on all parallels and meridians of the earth, regardless of time and space, is to be happy. This is our belief that the ultimate desire of all human beings, wherever they are, whatever time and place they may be in, is to be happy. And if happiness is the goal of human beings, it is the responsibility of elected governments to make sure, to create conditions to enable the experience of happiness. This is one of the premises. The other premise of gross national happiness is this. That is, the profound needs of human beings are not necessarily material or physical. The profound needs of human beings are not necessarily material or physical, but that there are other deeper dimensions of life: the natural dimension, the social dimension, the cultural dimension, spiritual dimension, psychological, aesthetic, moral, and other dimensions that make life worthwhile and meaningful. And all these dimensions also need to be nurtured. Excuse me. The other premise about gross national happiness is that there is no necessary relationship between the level of material wealth and the level of happiness. There is no necessary relationship between the level of material wealth and the level of happiness. Often it is thought that the richer you are, the more happy you may be. The more wealthy you are, the more happy you may be. But gross national happiness contests this notion that material well-being necessarily creates a greater level of happiness. The two of them, in fact, could actually be antithetical to each other. The next assumption is that the goal of life cannot be limited to an endless cycle of production and consumption, more production and more consumption. This cannot be the goal of life. Production and consumption, more production and more consumption, infinitely. The third, the other notion about gross national happiness, that the conventional, linear, and unidimensional measure of progress, otherwise called GDP, is too limited and reductionist, as it leaves out other significant non-economic or non-material dimensions or factors. Gross national happiness is therefore a more holistic, integrated, and a more balanced approach to development. So as opposed to gross domestic product or gross national product, we believe that gross national happiness is a more holistic and a more integrated and a more balanced approach to development. Some time ago, the former Senator Robert Kennedy had said something to this effect: GDP does not register the beauty of our poetry, or the strength of our marriages, or the integrity of our public debates. It measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. This was Robert Kennedy. There's an old Japanese saying which goes to this effect: material things were necessary but subordinate and fell by the way. There were limits to material resources. It stands to reason, therefore, that material things do not last 1,000 years. That's why we believe that there's an urgent need to advance an alternative paradigm that ensures a more balanced and equitable socio-economic development, that supports the integrity of our natural environment, as well as something that acknowledges the wisdom and value of our heritage and culture, something that promotes good governance at all lives, at all levels, at the personal level, family level, institutional, social, national, international. So this being our goal for development in Bhutan, having 4 pillars, we call these 4 pillars: balanced socio-economic development, conservation of the natural environment, preservation of our culture and heritage, and promotion of good governance. We call them the 4 pillars of gross national happiness. We believe that for gross national happiness to be realized, we have to be able to create those conditions, that environment in which people can experience happiness. So these 4 pillars, we believe, are the minimum conditions. There could be more pillars, but at the moment we feel that these are sufficiently adequate. But as time goes by, as needs change, there could be more pillars, or perhaps fewer pillars. So how do we create these conditions? We feel that if a nation has a big dream, the subsystems of the nation have to support the dream. And education is perhaps the most powerful subsystem of the nation. That is why we feel that in order for us to advance this dream of gross national happiness, we must engage the education system. Archibald MacLeish, the chairman of the committee that wrote the preamble to the UNESCO, had something to say. There is no possible way of getting world peace except through education. In the same vein, we also believe that there is no possible way to advance GNH except through education. That is why in the year 2010, that's a year and a half or so ago, we launched a very big program of educational reform in the country. We call it Educating for Gross National Happiness. As I said earlier on, if a nation has a big dream, its education system must take ownership of the dream and must advance it. But talking about education, we are not talking about an education system that is simply interested in churning out graduates year after year. We are not talking about a college or a university that graduates people with degrees who are at the end of the day unsure of who they are and where they are going. We are not talking about a kind of education system that produces people who are merely career conscious and character oblivious. Certainly not the kind of people. We are not talking about an education system that sends out young people and young men and women who are devoid of either usefulness or gracefulness. Because a lot that goes on in the world in the name of education is not necessarily education. Bhutan expects its education system to support and to serve a goal that is allied to the goal of the nation. We are educating for gross national happiness by nurturing green schools for green Bhutan. We are invoking the nobility of the noble sector. Education is often called the noble sector. Perhaps it's the only sector that's called the noble sector. But where is the nobility of this noble sector? What goes on in the name of education in our schools? What goes on in the name of education in our colleges, in our universities, in our centers of learning? That's why today we are really redefining education itself. Of course, we know that we have to make sure that every single child in the country is able to get to school. People who want to pursue higher education are able to get to college or university. But simply pursuing education for collecting a degree at the end of the year, at the end of a program, we feel is not education. So, what are the elements of a green school or a GNH school, a GNH college, a GNH university, a GNH center of learning? We feel that the elements of a green school are the same elements that make us who we are as human beings. What makes us who we are? What are those elements that go into the making of who we are? We feel that all of us, because the society is an aggregate of each one of us, it is these elements that make the society what it is. Our green schools, therefore, encompass the natural or environmental greenery, intellectual or mental greenery, academic greenery, social greenery, cultural greenery, spiritual greenery, aesthetic greenery, and above all, moral greenery. We feel that by and large, these dimensions make us who we are. We have a natural dimension. We belong to nature. We need the earth. We need the air. We need water. We need the oxygen that plants provide to us. So what kind of integrity of relationship do we establish with the natural environment? And Bhutan is proud of its natural endowments. Bhutan is supposed to be one of the 10 biodiversity hotspots in the world. It is home to some of the rarest bird species, animal species, and plant species. We maintain a very close, intimate relationship with the environment. In cooperation with the environment, we feel we'll be able to sustain our lives. And our younger generation must be able to appreciate this natural bounty. So every school, we believe, every college, university must be naturally green. It is important to maintain the integrity of this human-nature relationship. So natural greenery is very important. Also, natural greenery is important to neutralize the concreteness of structures, which otherwise could be rather deadening this. I see that ESSEC is very green here, and this setting is a beautiful complement of the natural and the human, and this is what perhaps supports your life here. We also believe that intellectual greenery is very important. Intellectual greenery because one of the reasons why we come to a school or college or university is to build our minds, to cultivate the strength of our minds. Intellectual greenery is our capacity to open our minds to good ideas, new thoughts, new wisdom, new information. The ability to open our minds, our ability to receive new knowledge, new wisdom, new values is important. That's why we feel that our schools, colleges, universities must be intellectually green. The life of a school or a college or university is the life of its mind. How open the minds are, how ready the minds are to receive new knowledge. Otherwise, especially for small systems like ours, if our minds, if the scholars' minds in our schools, colleges, and universities are not green, we feel that we have so much to lose as a small system. We also believe that our schools must be academically green. Academic greenery is the ability of our scholars, students, and teachers who come to school to be able to discover the great ideas which are inherent in the different disciplines. We have been teaching physics for so many years. We have been teaching literature, language, history, geography. We have been teaching physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics for so many years as part of the curriculum. But it is important for our scholars, for students, to discover what makes physics physics, what makes mathematics mathematics, what is the nature of biology, what is the nature of chemistry. We would like our students and scholars to be able to discover the great ideas which have made these subjects so important and pervasive through the centuries. So academic greenery is a very important element of a green school. We feel that our schools must be socially green. To our schools come children from different homes, families, villages, hamlets, districts, from different parts of the country. So when they come to school, they share so many things in common. They share the same earth. They share facilities. They share the same air. They share the sky, the sun, the moon, everything. And when people stay together and share so many things in common, something positive must grow. Something positive must happen. And we believe that the social greenery, we call it social greenery. Social greenery is the sum total of all the good things that people are capable of producing. Good thoughts, good speech, good words, good action. And a school is only as good as the social energy that people who come there create and release. A college or university is only as good as the goodwill, the positive energy, the creative energy that people who come there create and release to the school, to the class, to the community. And our idea is that when students pass out of a school system, a college, university system, with these values embedded in their minds and join the larger society, they will be able to release these good values to the society. They'll make the society that much more sensitive, that much more feeling, that much more hearing. I think one of the problems in the world today is that we have eyes that do not see, ears that do not hear. That's why one of the reasons why we have education system is to make people sensitive, more hearing, more feeling, more listening, more sensitive towards each other. Otherwise, we have a lot of people who graduate from school systems, college, university systems, who may have big degrees, but who may not be able to relate properly with each other, may not be able to relate with the other members of the society, with the community. They may be lonely people. That's why we feel that building of social greenery is very important. And especially for small systems, the friendship that our young people build in the school is important for the friendship of the society. The unity and the harmony, the understanding that they build when they're in school is important for the friendship, for the unity, for harmony and understanding of the society. We feel that's why we call this program Building Green Schools for Green Bhutan. And of course, culture is a very important part of our society. So cultural greenery is very important. Culture, again, has got to be understood in a very big way, both in its tangible form as well as intangible form. Celebration of the diversity of the culture, being able to honor each other, being able to respect each other, being able to create space for the celebration of each other's cultural experiences is very important to make people able to participate in our democratic society. So that's called cultural greenery. We also have spiritual greenery. Spiritual greenery is an acceptance of the fact that as we are not complete. As we are not full. As we are not perfect. But in relation to something bigger than ourselves, superior to ourselves, in relation to a bigger idea, a noble idea, we achieve ever higher levels of fullness, ever higher levels of excellence, ever higher levels of perfection. And this acceptance of something bigger than ourselves, it could be our teacher, it could be our professor, it could be our parents, it could be God, it could be some element of nature that supports our life. This we call spiritual greenery. It doesn't necessarily have to be have anything to do with the religion, but spiritualism, richly endowed spiritual meaningful life, we feel is very important. Otherwise, young people could be very aggressive at times. They could be very egoistic. They do not make room for the participation of other people in their lives, so they remain cut out. So spiritual greenery. We also feel that it's important to build aesthetic greenery, the ability to appreciate beautiful things. Otherwise, there's so much available today on the television screen, so much available in front of the children through the internet, the mass media. And sometimes, even though there's so much good there is to see on the television screen, there could still be so much that could suck young people's soul. That's why it is important to maintain the integrity of the life. Otherwise, education could be quite a difficult challenge for young people. We have to be able to secure the integrity of the life of the learners. That's why we feel that it's important to build aesthetic greenery. Above all, we feel that it's important to build moral greenery. Moral greenery is nothing but an appreciation of the category of values. There is something called truth as opposed to something called untruth or falsehood. Something called right as opposed to something called wrong. Something called good as opposed to something called bad. How did human beings come to realize these values? These are the foundational principles of our life. At the end of the day, our life, our societies, our nations, this world depends upon some great foundational principles. So this is what sets us apart from other lower order animals. the ability to distinguish good from bad, the ability to distinguish truth from falsehood, right from wrong, is what makes us human beings. And our children, who are the future leaders of the country, must be able to understand what moral greenery is. Otherwise, it's quite possible the young people can fall for anything and everything. They will not have the strength of character to resist what is not correct, what is not good for them. That's why we feel that these 8 elements of a green school are very important. These 8 elements respond to the different dimensions of our life. And because we human beings, individual members, together make the society, we feel that these 8 elements inculcated in our schools will also be able to address the elements of a society, elements of a country. It is difficult to do this. Just as pursuing the goal of gross national happiness is more difficult than pursuing the goal of gross domestic product, so also educating for gross national happiness is much more difficult than simply improving test scores, than simply improving examination results. But we feel that our young people must be able to engage their mind, their heart, and their hands. We must be able to provide to our young people a more holistic education. In essence, the program of Educating for GNH is a call to return to the core function of education. What must physics be doing? What must chemistry be doing? What must biology education, mathematics education be doing? Why do we teach literature to our children? Why do we teach language? What is the secret about history? What is sociology? What is fine arts? What is management, for example? What is the soul behind the roles? By role, we are scholars. By role, we may be professors. By role, this is a university, a business school. But what went into the making of this business school? What goes into the making of physics? What goes into the making of chemistry? So today we are asking these fundamental questions about education. What is the purpose of education? Is this simply fitting people out for jobs, as important as jobs are? Is it simply preparing people for the employment market, as important as it is? Or does education have a bigger goal? Should education have a bigger goal? Should education not prepare people to be better human beings? These are questions that we are asking in Bhutan today. So educating for gross national happiness is simply another name of doing education's job the way it should be done. What must education do? If it is called the noble sector, where does nobility lie in this sector? Does education make people more noble, noble in thoughts, noble in deeds, noble in actions? Or does it only make people more career hungry, more career conscious, pushing ahead ahead of everybody? Or does it make people more sociable, more understanding, more feeling, and more able to communicate with each other? We feel that education, we owe it to our young people. We owe it to our young people, young men and women, to show them that life is more than qualifications and careers, as important as they are. We owe it to our societies and our nations to provide a vision of the future and help build personal and intellectual foundations. I'm so glad to hear that in this university there is a beautiful blend of personal cultivation as well as professional improvement. And this is very much akin to our own goal of pursuing gross national happiness. In France, there was a great writer, Thomas Mann, and it will be, I just want to quote one line from the young hero there. Says something to this effect: for the sake of goodness and love, man shall let death have no sovereignty over his thought. I think there's so much goodness in the world, and it is for education to be able to affirm that goodness and to promote it Otherwise, what will society look up to? What are the foundations that society will look up to? Who are the people in the society that people will look up to? We feel that education must be able to provide an alternative. So GNH, or gross national happiness, is something like our North Star. Sometimes people have the feeling that since Bhutan is talking about gross national happiness, everybody in Bhutan must be very happy. That is not true. Excuse me. We have our own challenges. But just as the North Star guides sailors on the wide open seas towards their direction, so also gross national happiness is our North Star. It guides our actions, our planning, our policies in the direction which we feel is desirable. It's difficult, but there are certain things which are desirable, and this is what we would like to follow. It can be an answer to our times, an anodyne to still the tooth that nibbles at the heart. With all the progress that our world has made, there are still challenges. Our big foundations, the economic foundations, financial foundations, philosophical foundations, spiritual foundations seem to be giving way. There must be an alternative. What will that alternative be? So gross national happiness is, in fact, a call to be more sensitive, respect our relationship with the environment, because there have been so many environmental challenges today. Global warming, climate change, tsunamis, disasters of all kinds, mass movements of people across nations, collapse of economic foundations, cultural breakdown, suicides on a mass scale in so many places, drug addiction, drug abuse, love of life, sometimes challenged by the love of death. What is happening to life? What do young people look up to them? That's why gross national happiness is, in fact, a way of living a more harmonious life in cooperation with the environment, with the surrounding, receiving the blessings and the wisdom of our culture, organizing our social and economic life in a much more sustainable way, promoting governance at all levels. How is my life governed? How is my personal life governed? How is my family life governed? How is my school life governed? Institutional life governed? How is the nation governed? How might the world be governed? So good governance relates to all these different levels. So we feel that gross national happiness could be an answer to irresponsible economic arrangements, business arrangements. It could be an answer to the breakdown of our relationship between humans and nature. It could be an answer to the breakdown of cultural foundations. It could be an answer to the corruption that we see rampant in so many societies. So gross national happiness as opposed to gross national product. Gross national happiness is or has been the dream of one man, His Majesty the 4th King of Bhutan. But at the end of the day, we feel that it is the dream of all humanity, everybody in the world, irrespective of whichever parallel or meridian, whether it's the North Pole or the South Pole, Southern Hemisphere, whichever hemisphere, from tropic to tropic, we have one dream, that is to be happy. So ultimately, GNH is an act of faith. It's an appeal, it's a prayer for a good life, a more responsible life, for a society that's much more sustainable. So we feel that education has a very big role in supporting such a program, and at the moment we are requiring education to support this program. I'm very grateful to all of you for this very patient hearing. I have not been very coherent in my presentation, but you have been absolutely kind and very patient to tolerate me. I would like to wish all of you the very best of luck and happiness, and also wish that each one of us is not only able to pursue happiness, but also be the cause of happiness. Once again, to all of you, Professor Soam, professors here, and scholars of ESSEC, I would have to say what a great delight it's been for me to travel all the way from Bhutan to be with you this afternoon, and I owe it to you, Professor Soam. Thank you so much indeed. If there are some questions, I'll be very happy to respond to those. You must be very tired already. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Is Felipe? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, hello. I'm Felipe. I come from Spain.
Spain.
As many countries, due to the financial crisis, many governments are cutting the education budget. If you had to convince this government to don't cut this education budget, which argument will you use?
We haven't had to do that in Bhutan because education receives the highest budget in the country. It is something like 17%, between 15 and 17% of the total budget is allocated to education. So between health and education, we receive something like 23%. So Bhutan is a very small country, as you know, with a very small population. So we believe that we must make the most of what we have. And what we have is people, or our people. We are not a rich country. We are landlocked. We do not have very many resources. The only wealth that we have are the Bhutanese people. And we feel that we must invest in our people. And the best way to invest in people is through education. And to this end, our government has realized that it is important to build our people. So we have provided quite a sizable chunk of the budget, even though in total it is not much. Bhutan's total budget outlay is not as big as that of richer countries. But in relative terms, we get a fairly generous budget to support our education system. I think it's important for societies, for systems to understand that at the end of the day, the bottom line is education. I feel certainly that if education succeeds in any country, that country can succeed. Education failing, however rich a country may be, that country will go only so far and no further. So for the bottom line for countries to succeed is how good its education system is. It prepares all the people. Every other sector depends upon education, whether it is the economic sector, the diplomatic sector, whether it is the industrial sector, manufacturing sector, agricultural sector. At the end of the day, every other sector has got to depend upon education. What kind of people do we prepare to look after all these sectors? Depends upon education. That's why if we build education, we build the system, we build the nation, we build the people. I think education is that important. Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for this discourse. I'd like to ask you, in an open world where there is a lot of diversity, where every population, every culture has its own values for happiness, don't you think that people of Bhutan may be influenced by other countries' happiness, and that will may come into contradiction with their own happiness values, so that the gross happiness pursuit will change depending of other countries?
Yes, thank you. It's quite possible that as societies open up, let me go back a bit till the early 1960s, late 1950s. Bhutan remained in what we call self-imposed isolation. There were not very many visitors, and Bhutan didn't have much contact with the world outside. But in the middle of the last century, Bhutan started opening up, and now we realize that we are quite a dynamic country. Bhutan is not enclosed; it is no longer isolated. So it is. We feel that we must be able to do two things. we must be able to find a middle path between what we have as part of our own culture and heritage, but we must not be blind to what other people in other cultures and civilizations have done. We have benefited from the study of the English language. We have benefited from the study of science and mathematics, which have come from other countries. We have benefited from innovations, enterprise that people around the world have actually produced. So we would like to be able to preserve some of the good things that we have in our own culture, while at the same time benefiting from the fruits of innovation, development, technology, progress from around the world. So it will be wrong for us to say that we will not accept from anything from outside. The very fact that I have come here is to learn from you, not only to make a speech here, but also to see what I can learn, what my colleagues can learn from being here. So we're quite open. In fact, if I can give an image of where we want to go, where we want to go ultimately can be explained by an image. It is an image of a monk reading the Holy Scriptures, while at the same time his food is being cooked by laser beams. I don't know if I've made myself very clear. So there's a monk reading the Holy Scriptures, while in the corner his food is being cooked by laser beams, meaning that our traditional, cultural, spiritual heritage is important for us. We want to retain those, while at the same time we want to benefit from science and technology. So we are not averse to what comes from outside. We have to be selective. We can't take in everything. That's why even in terms of tourist flow, we have been fairly selective so far. So we want to bring about a blend between the best of what we have received as well as what can come from outside. Thank you, sir. Yes.
So thanks for your speech, and I really like your point that the pursuit of happiness is irrelevant with gross domestic production and consumption. As we know, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is put forward ever since, as I know, it's put forward ever since the Declaration of Independence of the United States.
Yeah.
And I am thinking, is there maybe any connection with this principle the United States put forward? This is the first question. And I'm also wondering, as for this program, this gross national happiness program, how do you measure whether it is success or not?
I think, in the first place, I do not think that there are any historical connections between our own idea of gross national happiness and the American independence. These are historical coincidences, I would think so. But some of the great ideals of humanity are the same, across time and place. So, as I said earlier on, irrespective of time and place, all human beings all over the world want to be happy, including the Americans and the Bhutanese and the French. Yes. So I think this is the bottom line. And as far as the second part of the question, how do we measure happiness? If we start measuring happiness, we will be going the same way as GDP or GNH, GDP or GNP would do. We feel that not everything in life needs to be measured. Not everything that counts can be counted, as somebody says. So we feel that we need to create conditions, the necessary basic minimum conditions, hoping that if the minimum conditions are in place, people might be able to experience a sense of happiness, a sense of well-being. So at the moment in Bhutan, we are not saying that one fine morning all the Bhutanese people will be happy or should be happy. We cannot decree happiness. But what we feel is that the government must create those conditions, hoping that once these minimum conditions are in place, people are going to be comfortable, they're going to experience a sense of well-being, and that will lead to contentment, that will lead to happiness. This is what we believe can work. But certainly we will not be able to dictate people to be happy, because people will have different reasons to be happy. But for everybody, if we can have the basic minimum environment, we feel that that will support people's experience of joy, of well-being, of happiness. There's this famous doctor, in fact, who escaped the prison camps in Germany to write a book called Search for Meaning. And he said that happiness cannot be pursued, it has to ensue. Meaning that you have the basic environment, and that should actually lead to an experience of happiness. So in the same way, we believe that these 4 pillars that I talked about earlier on should be able to create the necessary conditions. And once they're done, we feel that it will give people reasons to be happy, to have a sense of well-being. But if we start measuring happiness, it will be difficult. Our fourth king said that if at the end of any 5-year plan period, we know that our people are not any happier than they were before, we should know that our plans have failed. So in other words, we in our planning in Bhutan, every project of any government ministry or department will have to be put through the GNH Commission, Gross National Happiness. Earlier on, this body was called Planning Commission, but now we call it Gross National Happiness Commission. Every project of the government will have to be vetted by this commission. And if these projects are not GNH compatible, they are rejected or they are reviewed. So they have to be made GNH compatible. Then only those projects will be approved and money made available. So there are conscious efforts to make sure that all the functionaries of the government are conscious of the need to create those conditions. So we would like to build that environment, and in fact expect that those will lead to people being happy and have a sense of well-being. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last 3 questions, probably?
Yes, I've gone. Yes, a little more than an hour. Yes.
Thanks for the lecture. You have mentioned the 4 pillars by which Bhutan is measuring gross national happiness. Don't you think that actually those 4 pillars are being measured but in another way in other systems?
Oh yes, I'm sure they would be, yes, because we call these 4 pillars, but somebody else may be calling them something else. So there's a lot of interest in the world today about measuring happiness. How do we measure happiness? In fact, we have a body called the Center for Bhutan Studies, and this center has developed, has broken these 4 pillars down into 9 domains. And these 9 domains include several factors like education. If education is education available or not? Are health facilities available or not? What is the relationship between family life and work life? How is time use? What is the value of culture? And these 9 domains are further broken down into 72 indices. So there are actually some efforts to see as to how happiness may be assessed. And people further afield are also working, including some economists like Professor Joseph Stiglitz, Professor Amartya Sen. And I'm so glad to hear that in France, President Sarkozy himself is quite interested in looking at alternative ways of looking at people's well-being. So there are efforts around the world today, especially those who know about what Bhutan is doing, to see as to how GNH may be assessed and measured. But it will be very interesting to see, because we feel that if we are very obsessed with measuring happiness, we may be going the same way as GDP or GNP way. And GNH is much more profound, much more complex than GNP or GDP. I'm sure, Professor, you'll have a way to measure happiness later. Yes.
He's a student.
Sorry. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Very good. Close to Professor here, Dominic. Yes, sir. Yes.
I first heard about Bhutan when I was a student, and I heard that your king decided to change the system by a referendum to have a constitution and everything. I was very impressed, and I would like to know how it works to be politically ruled by a kind of philosophical king. I don't know. How is it possible? Has it always been like this in your country? I know too that your country has your actual king has decided to switch from polygamy to monogamy lately. This past week, I think it was announced in the world. So your country is changing by political decisions from kings, and it's very impressive. So, what is your philosophy?
Yes, I think His Majesty the Fourth King abdicating the throne in favor of our present king perhaps is one of the supreme examples of impermanence. Nothing is permanent in life, whether it's power, position, your rank, nothing is permanent. So he was very young. Very young means young by international standards for a king. He gave up. In fact, as soon as he became king in 1972, he was just going on 17. Our third king passed away as a result of a heart attack away in Nairobi. So our fourth king had to assume the role of a king almost overnight. But he has been a very wise king. So he was preparing Bhutan for democracy. In 1981, he introduced the system called district development committees, transferring more powers to the districts. And in 1991, he created what is called block development committees, taking decision-making power further down to the level of the people. And in 1998, he created a committee of ministers who are elected with the minister who got the highest number of votes to be the chairman for 1 year. And in 2001, he decided to create, he ordered the writing of a written constitution. And after that, he took the constitution around the country, explaining what a constitution is to the people. Otherwise, we are not used to a constitution as such. And of course, in 2006, he announced that he was going to hand over kingship to the crown prince. And all this came as a shock to the Bhutanese people. We were not prepared at all for such an announcement. We were very happy with what His Majesty the Fourth King was doing. All the development works, especially in the modern sector, came through his own personal initiative from the throne. And the Bhutanese people were not at all looking for a change. In fact, we thought that His Majesty the Fourth King would continue for a long, long time to come. But His Majesty decided that sometimes the country could be very lucky if that one man who is the king is a good man. If that one man who decides what the country should do, what development efforts should be made in the country, is good, then the country may be happy. But what is the guarantee that that one man would always be good? So he thought that instead of one man making decisions for the country, it should be the people of Bhutan who should make decisions for themselves. And he introduced democracy. After 100 years of monarchy, in 1907, the people of Bhutan came together and requested our first king to be the central authority. So there was then a monarchy under the Wangchuck kings for 100 years, from 1907 to 2007. And in 2006 itself, His Majesty the Fourth King decided that Bhutan must now go democratic. So after 100 years, the fourth king of Bhutan returned to the people of Bhutan the power that people had actually offered to the king. This must be one of the most fascinating things in the monarchical traditions of the world. So even now he's young, His Majesty the fourth king, but he's at the back, and we have a young king, 31 years old, king who got married recently. So we have been very fortunate with our kingship. So all the good things actually have emanated from the throne. They have decided. So now there's democracy, and democracy could be very exciting, very dramatic, but it can often be unruly. So we are still stabilizing democracy in the country. We have got used to being looked after so well by our kings. So when we have to look after the country ourselves, the people of Bhutan have had to be so much more careful and so much more responsible. And without self-discipline, without a sense of responsibility, democracy cannot work. It is based on the principle of self-discipline, principle of personal responsibility. So at the moment, we are doing two things. The current government is doing two things. It has to provide the basic services to the people. People need roads. We have to build roads. People have to be given fresh drinking water. We have to provide fresh drinking water. They need education. They need health services, agricultural services, support systems. They need communication services. These have to be provided right now. But we have also got to see that democracy takes proper roots. It deepens in the system. Otherwise, there are democracies and democracies all around the world. Not every democracy has succeeded. So we have to make sure that Bhutanese democracy succeeds, that it serves the people. Democracy, after all, is an instrument of service. Governance is an instrument of service. So if we are not able to serve the people of Bhutan, democracy will fail, governance will fail. That's why at the moment we're doing these two things: provide basic services to the people, but at the same time trying to see as to how democracy might take root and stabilize in Bhutan. Thank you.
Quick questions, and then we have to stop.
As you said that the job of education is to make people, help people become better, I assume, I have one question. Is your educational system open only to young people or to all kind of age people? That is a 60-year-old man or woman can go back to school?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, sir. We look at education in terms of waves. The first wave is called monastic education. It began many centuries ago. It still continues, the monastic wave. We have then what is called the modern Western style English medium education. They started sometime in the early 1960s, and this is the most powerful wave. The current generation of professionals, civil servants, doctors, engineers, our architects, our professionals are all products of the second modern education wave. And the third wave is called non-formal education wave. The non-formal education wave is for people who missed the bus when they were young, either because there were no schools or there were too many things to do at home so that they couldn't go to school. We feel that these people must get a second chance in life. So we have created a large network of non-formal education schools across the country. And we have been doing quite well in non-formal education program. As a matter of fact, in 2009, the UNESCO awarded to Bhutan the Confucius Literacy Prize for non-formal and continuing education. And the candidates who take up the non-formal education opportunities are housewives, grown-up men. Some of them are as old as 70 years. People who feel that they have to learn something. Even if they know how to read and write, how to read the newspaper, there is an achievement for them. And we had the recent local government elections. Most of the candidates who contested the local government elections were graduates of our non-formal education program, including many women. So we have provision for people who are fairly old. As long as they want to learn, we have provisions. In fact, we have situations where the daughter is the tutor and the mother is the student in the same class. And we've got people who are as old as 70 years who are also taking our non-formal education program.
Last question.
Yes.
Do you develop a specific vision of women's happiness in Bhutan? For example, are they encouraged to work outside or to stay at home?
In Bhutan, there is a perfect gender equality. Yes. In fact, in some of the areas, women have much more authority, especially in terms of making family decisions and educational opportunities, voting rights. Everybody has. In fact, we do not have the kind of imbalance that we can see in some parts of the world. Education is available to both boys and girls. As a matter of fact, we have already achieved gender parity, which is one of the Millennium Development Goals. At the primary education level, at the middle secondary level, we have already achieved gender parity. In fact, at the primary level, we have more girls than boys. At the tertiary level, we have to work a little harder. As far as the parliament participation in the parliament goes, we have fewer women than men. But this is the first election that we had in Bhutan. And all of us got into the political process not by choice, but we thought that His Majesty the Fourth King had decided that Bhutan must go democratic, and people had to come forward. But it was very unsure as to whether one was going to win or lose, because in Bhutan, if you have to fight an election, you have to resign from your service. Then only you can fight. So people are concerned as to whether they would win or lose. So they were reluctant to resign and join the political process. So whether it was men or women, initially, people are very reluctant to join the political process. That's why there are fewer women in the parliament than men. But we hope that in the second round, there will be more women as well. But as far as participation is concerned, it's absolutely open. So we have absolute gender parity in Bhutan. And as a matter of fact, we have some very powerful positions occupied by women, and they're doing very well. We do not have a separate arrangement for women per se. We feel that that may not be correct even. If women have to come into positions of responsibility through reservations or affirmative action, in the long run that may not be good. So we feel that there must be equality of space for both men and women, and everybody must prove themselves. And we have seen that our women have done a wonderful job whenever they've got an opportunity. So, including my colleague here, Jamyang is the chief of the National Commission for UNESCO, and there are other ladies who are doing a very good job as well. So, at the moment, we haven't thought of any separate arrangement for women, but we feel that given equal opportunities, they will prove themselves and give a good account of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, yes, sir. Thank you, Professor.
Now I'll call Gerard to give the vote of thanks and some gifts to our guests. So I call Gerard not only because he's the Director of International Relations of ESSEC, but 20 years before he went to Bhutan.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and like I will probably witness some and give some personal experience about. There was a lot of question about how do we measure the national happiness and how can we do it through quantitative things. I can just give you some feeling about having versus being. I was in Bhutan 20 years ago, 25 years ago. That was probably the most amazing experience in my professional life. And I lost my wallet somewhere in Bhutan. I didn't know where, in a restaurant, in a street, in a shop. And in this wallet, I was traveling for 1 month. There was probably in cash something like 2 or 3 years of income for somebody in Bhutan. And the day after, I found my wallet in my hotel. It was brought back by somebody. And that was probably a way to measure having against being. It was intact with all the cash inside. And that was really a kind of experience of this kind of feeling on happiness. So thank you once again. sir, to having been with us. Thank you, Ashok, for inviting the minister.
So this is a small gift for His Excellency the Minister. I have given him a book on Paris in French.
Oh, that's very good. Oh, thank you so much.
We have some
Paris. I'm
some
taking
program
Paris with me.
brochures. And I have given him one of my books.
Ah, look at this.
And also
Design.
and also for happiness sake, we give you a ESSEC bottle of champagne.
Oh, look at this.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you very
so
much.
ESSEC Business School. I think you make yourselves very happy most of the time. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much indeed, Professor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.